two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. I'm here today with Cameron Mozafari. He lives in Ithaca and teaches at Cornell. Cameron Mozafari, tell us more about yourself.
Cameron Mozafari. Like Teresa said, I teach at Cornell. I'm the College of Engineering. My background is in uh, cognitive linguistics and persuasion more generally. So I'm interested in looking at, how we engage with the world around us and how that has effects on us. I'm also here to talk about, as Teresa invited me to talk about issues with Iran that are going on right now. So I'm Iranian American. It's my father's homeland. So I have family back in Iran, like many people in the diaspora. I was born and raised in America, but always look at your relatives in Iran. And currently, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I thought that maybe it'd be nice to have a little conversation about it.
Yes, um, today is an important word for us. Today is February 23rd, 2026. In Iran, the situation is very volatile. Everything could be changing even as we speak. But first, let's look back in time a bit. Before World War II, was Iran part of the British Empire?
No, Iran was never colonized by Britain or by any country. I think maybe you might get that impression because early in the 20th century, Britain went into Iran and ended up, where we get British petroleum from, ended up making deals that started this kind of long-standing relationship between Iran and certain Western powers of trying to defend its oil reserves versus trying to nationalize its oil, and then having coups or penalties like sanctions put on them for not complying with what the West wants them to do with their oil.
And when did the United States get involved with Iran?
Uh, so the U.S. probably formally got involved with Project Ajax, which was CIA plot to overthrow the democratically elected president or prime minister of Iran in 1953. Mohammad Mossadegh was a kind of popular leader who wanted to nationalize the oil so that people who were depending on the oil were paying what it was worth. And that was not something that the UK wanted, and it was not something that the US wanted either, because they wanted access to cheap oil. So they instituted the Shah. So uh, they brought back this king system and tried to create this kind of proxy country with Iran. That would be like a kind of Cold War buffer. You would have Western values being presented within Iran. And, there were there were a lot of benefits. A lot of people think back about the time of the Shah with fondness. often because the time currently is so terrible with the theocracy that is currently ruling Iran. So you get this kind of interesting America vibe that is present in a lot of nostalgia that people have for pre-revolutionary Iran.
Huh. Well, I remember the time when there were American hostages. So perhaps tell us a bit about that. I think that's when many of us became aware of the existence of Iran.
Yeah. So I mean, it's yes. So in 1979, during the Iranian Revolution, there were a group of revolutionaries who took people within the American embassy hostage, and that actually closed international relations between America and Iran. So there's no, I'm a dual citizen between America and Iran, but there's no embassy for going to Iran. You have to go to the Pakistani embassy, for example. And the two countries don't necessarily see eye to eye when it comes to issues of foreign policy, obviously, but they don't even want to talk about it, which kind of leads to a lot of the problems that we have now. So yeah, you had this hostage crisis in 1979, lasted for, famously for 444 days. Um, you had a lot of people who were, chanting "Death to America" or, uh, death to Israel. You had various kinds of strong um, statements that were being broadcast on television, and it was kind of fomenting this fear of Iran that I think a lot of people that I was growing up with, their parents definitely grew up in as well. But it's worth mentioning as well that even within Iran, you have a majority, I think now a majority, if not a majority, a very strong minority of the people being born, uh, after the revolution. And same with people who were born within the diaspora, like myself. I was not born in 1979. I wasn't alive in 1979. So a lot of the stuff survives because of ongoing crises that kind of reflect back to this East versus West mentality that was kind of perpetuated by a lot by the media, and how Iran was represented in the West, and then how America was represented in Iran as well.
Well, that hostage crisis, I remember, became a real crisis for President Carter
Hmm.
and probably had a lot to do with the election of Reagan, which really changed many things in the United States, much for the worse, as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree.
Uh, well, I mean, I think we're both socialists, so no surprise. Um, in speaking for myself, in the 1990s and early in the millennium, Iran disappeared from my attention. I was concerned about globalization, international trade agreements, the World Bank, and the IMF. But during those years, the 1990s and early in the millennium, what was happening in Iran?
Well, I mean, so Iran was recovering from the Iran-Iraq War. There were a lot of infrastructural changes, but then also the government was changing too. A lot of that was happening in the 80s. And then during the 90s, you got this rise of reform, people trying to see what they could do within, the legal systems that were created by the Islamic Republic. And you found a lot of people making a lot of strides during that time. There was this big reformist movement. There was a president in 1997, Khatami, who was elected, and he promised better relationships with the West. So there was a lot of hope that was happening, and then that kind of like teetered. And then finally, in about 2009, I was in college during that time. There was a famous uh, dispute over whether or not somebody, the former president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, had cheated in an election, and that led to a kind of they called the Green Revolution, where the various protests that went under the banner of the Green Movement. So there was this kind of like symbolism that started of populist reform, more liberal values coming through protests in 2009, and that kind of continued in at various times to bring that kind of progressive argument into the public view.
Well, was the United States involved with these protests at all?
No, not really. So they weren't involved with the protests in the 1990s or the early 2000s. Uh, what you ended up seeing was that Iran was sanctioned by the United States, and then they were continually sanctioned. And in the 2000s, the sanctions got very, very bad. So they encouraged, the various other countries to continue to sanction Iran as well, or to sanction them even worse. And part of this was a ploy to try to get Iran to stop doing nuclear research on nuclear testing. And you saw that happening all the way up through Obama. So there was the famous nuclear deal that Obama made, where he had agreed to lift some sanctions in order to allow for Iran to, as long as Iran agreed that they would not continue with nuclear research. And Obama did agree to that. Then Trump, in I think 2018, canceled the nuclear agreement with Iran, reinstituted very harsh sanctions, which led to a lot of economic crippling. So what we end up seeing is that America is trying. I mean, I think it's safe to say that America is trying to cripple the Iranian regime by sanctioning the Iranian regime, by sanctioning the country of Iran. And that's leading to a lot of unrest with the people of Iran, who are feeling a lot of the setbacks of those sanctions. And part of the things that people are protesting in Iran right now, at least initially, when all the protests broke out in December of 2025, one of the things that they were really protesting was the use of funds that the regime prioritizes. So they seem to prioritize, funding these anti-Israeli regimes, or these anti-Israeli groups in Lebanon or in Syria, but they don't seem to prioritize their own people, and that has led to some slippery language and slippery ideologies currently. I think there's this weird sort of alignment with a lot of Iranian people with Israel that is a unidirectional thing and purely symbolic. And I can't imagine very many Iranian people would, after watching 2 years of a genocide on live stream, would trust Israel as benevolent sorts of rulers at the moment.
But so Israel is also involved in this picture.
Absolutely.
And okay, there's strong enmity between Israel and Iran.
Yeah. So Israel, it goes a couple of ways. You have a Jewish population in Iran. Israel has long since been interested in that population as well. But there's a historical animosity between Israel and Persia, and then one of the things. I mean, there's also a historical within Jewish scriptures. There's a very important place for Persia in reinstating Israel too. Worth pointing that out. But
okay, and Persia
modern
is another name for Iran.
Yes, yeah, Persia is another name for Iran. The name that the West gave, but the Greeks, I think, originally called. from Pars, which is a place in Iran. Uh, but the kind of modern issue currently is that you have Israel, which is a very strong power within the Middle East, and it becomes a little bit destabilized if it's not, um, controlled in some way. And currently, Iran is one of the kind of chief ways in which Israel is controlled within the Middle East. So one of the things that people are afraid of is that if Iran falls, you have a power vacuum in the Middle East. You hear a lot of this uh, with various pro-Palestine groups saying that if the uh, Islamic regime of Iran was to fall, then what happens to Palestine, or how does all the money that was kind of pushed through the Islamic Republic, uh, how does that kind of find the places that it was supporting in order to hold together certain geopolitical rivalries within the Middle East?
Okay. Well, let me say again, today is February 23rd, 2026. Things are very volatile in Iran. So what is happening now?
Well, today or yesterday, there was some protests at a university, or at various universities. And this was a continued series, but this is a kind of there's been a lot of unrest. If you haven't been following at all, there has been a lot of unrest uh, that started in December of 2025. The currency of Iran, the Iranian rial, completely flatlined, so it lacked value, and a lot of people were afraid, of what that means for being able to survive anymore. So there was a fear that people would not be able to afford food or rent, and it sounds very familiar, I think, to a lot of people as well. So the shops in Iran and Tehran closed, and there were some protests. The protests became more and more popular. They turned to anti-regime protests. And in January, early January, January 8th, the regime shut off the internet completely. And uh, everybody was worried that that meant that they were just going to do what they did actually during the gasoline protests just a decade back, which was to murder people and then shut down the internet to try to control the story. And that's exactly what they did. They killed tens of thousands of people, according to human rights groups. Various groups are reporting various numbers. So it's a really scary thing that the regime has done, and it's terrified a lot of the people. I have family in Iran, I have friends in Iran, and people are just beside themselves. They don't know what to do. Um, and there since has been a kind of movement to try to bring the Shah, the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, into Iran to be a transitionary leader after America or Israel, is to overthrow the the regime. Mind you, America has not agreed to this, so I think a lot of this is very wishful. And regardless of what you think about the Shah, or what you think about Reza Pahlavi, it's a really telling thing that Iranians would uh, would ask to be overthrown in order to continue to exist.
Yeah, people don't usually do that. Um, but again, it is interesting. You said the United States is not backing the son of the Shah.
Not
but
currently.
not, yeah. But that doesn't mean that the United States is uninvolved.
Oh no, that's definitely not the case.
So,
The United States is involved in so many ways. Currently we have military uh, boats that are pointed towards Iran. We're threatening a full-scale invasion. Though how true that is, who knows? Because one day we're trying to negotiate a new nuclear deal. The next day it's if you don't agree with us, we're going to obliterate you. So there's like a lot of uncertainty in what's going on. America is the cause of a lot of this uncertainty, and it's very interesting to me, as somebody who listens to media that is created both in the United States in Farsi and also by Iranian people who post on social media from Iran. It's interesting to see the different kinds of ways that people are understanding what's going on because from a kind of top-down view and just looking to see what the cause of a lot of this animosity is. It's America. So seeing the invitation that a lot of Iranians have of please come in and destroy our regime, it seems short-sighted to me, but I'm also in a very privileged position to be able to see that.
and interesting that at one point you said they shut down the internet, and then you said people
Yeah.
were posting on social media. Isn't that contradictory?
No, so a lot of, there are various things that people are doing to get around the widespread censors that are keeping the world out of Iran currently. So one of the ways that people are connecting to the world is through Elon Musk's Starlink. So Starlink is available to some people in Iran. And I think this is a well-known, uh, not so secret anymore. And because of that, we were able to get some information. We also got information from people who left Iran, who went to Turkey or who went to Azerbaijan, who had video footage on their phone, and then we got some posts that way. But by and large, I think a lot of people. You see a lot more people who are on online now. And uh, the reason for that is because there are ways around the censors, though the censors are still up. Iran is still trying to block all communication, and it could be, tomorrow that they find a way to block that too.
Well, and the United States has, I believe, sent some of its biggest ships to to near to Iran. At least
That's,
that's what I hear on the radio.
that's correct. Yeah. There is at least a threat of war currently. Um, and this could escalate into, as I was saying earlier, to a big destabilizing event within the Middle East, but it also could escalate into a larger war. If you look at, you know, southern Iran, you have a lot of uh, ports and companies that are run by China and land that's bought by China. So investing interests, Russia depends on Iranian oil. If you think about who is reliant on Iran and who would not want to give that up, you can easily see how this is a proxy for a larger geopolitical war also.
So, all in all, it sounds like a very dangerous situation,
Yeah.
uh, especially given the governments of Russia, China, Israel, and also the United States.
I mean, it's worth noting that, I mean, America has a terrible genocidal history. Um, but in modern history, none of those countries killed, 20,000 people in 2 days, right? This is a really terrible event that has happened
In Iran,
in
you mean?
Iran. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that figure is applies to Iran
Yes,
and the current regime there.
correct.
Well, thank you, Cameron Mozafari. So, this is where things stand in Iran as of the afternoon of February 23rd, 2026. This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. Thanks for watching.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.